Chapter 1. Prologue. Hold and rest. That's better. Very good. That really conveyed the feelings behind the music. Dr. Piers Clawton, tutorial fellow, organist and choirmaster at Holy Cross College, bent over his pupil and rested his left hand gently on his shoulder for a few moments, in a gesture of approval. I think we'll call it a day now. Carry on practising the fingering on the piano, and I'll see you again next week at the usual time. Yes, Dr. Clawton. Thank you. Gabriel leaned forward to gather up the pages of sheet music from which he had been playing. He stowed them carefully in the music case that he had been given for his 13th birthday 3 months earlier, before swinging his legs over the organ bench and getting to his feet. He enjoyed his weekly lessons with the middle-aged Don, who had a knack of giving just the right balance of encouragement and criticism to spur him on to greater efforts, without implying that his playing was inadequate. However, the knowledge that his mother would be getting a report on his progress when she took her morning coffee in the senior common room the next day gave them an element of risk that sometimes made him uncomfortable. Casting his mind back over the last 2 hours, he was confident that on this occasion there was nothing that she could interpret as indicating a lack of diligence or aptitude on his part. He got up, and Dr. Clawton took his place in front of the manuals, placing a new sheaf of music on the stand, and pulling and pushing stops in readiness for beginning his own practice. Christmas always came early in Oxford, because of the need for carol services and other celebrations to take place before the undergraduates left for home during the first week in December. He had a concert of seasonal music looming, and his performance needed to be perfect. As Gabriel made his way down the steep steps from the organ loft, a familiar melody from Handel's Messiah reverberated through the chapel. Without thinking, he joined in with the soprano line, "For unto us a child is born." He reached the foot of the stairs and stepped out into the passageway that divided the chapel from the hall, with its kitchens and storerooms. This was the rear entrance of the college, a narrow tunnel running through the building from Al-Qatani Quad, previously more prosaically known as the Back Quad, but recently renamed following refurbishments funded by a generous benefactor, to Goose Lane. "And the government shall be upon his shoulder, and the gov—" He broke off as, turning to the left to make his way out, he saw a cluster of people in a uniform of white tunics and black trousers. The white hats and striped aprons indicated that they were some of the kitchen staff, taking a break from preparing dinner for the students and fellows of the college. Gabriel approached them in silence. They were standing across the door to the outside world, blocking his exit. As he drew nearer, one of them glanced his way, and then turned back and continued chatting with his colleagues. "Excuse me," Gabriel said politely. "May I go through?" Instantly they all turned and stared at him. There were 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, all dressed alike, and all with cigarettes in their hands. "Excuse me," mimicked a youngish man with a shaved head in an exaggeratedly posh, rather camp accent. "May I come through?" Then, dropping the mocking voice, he continued, "And what are you doing here then, anyway?" "I've been in the chapel for a music lesson," Gabriel explained nervously. "What? They having bongo drums in there now?" scoffed the other man, a lanky redhead with big hands, which he was now moving up and down in front of him in a parody of playing African drums. "No, I'm learning the organ," Gabriel replied, knowing that they were making fun of him, but unable to think of a way of extricating himself from the conversation. "With Dr. Clawton." "Oh, listen to him!" The young woman stepped forward and leered at him. "He's been playing with Dr. Clawton's organ." "Ooh, you naughty boy!" the first man screamed, mincing towards Gabriel with one hand on his hip and the other waving his cigarette aloft in a gesture worthy of a 1970s comedy show. Gabriel backed away. "It's all right, I'll go round the other way." But they were all around him now. He was trapped. "So Dr. Clawton likes them exotic, does he?" demanded the red-headed man. Gabriel stared back at him in perplexity. What did he mean? "Pays you in bananas, does he?" the woman joined in. "No, he doesn't pay me. Mum pays him for the lessons," Gabriel replied, bewildered by the banter, but still anxious to be polite. "Whoo, whoo, whoo!" taunted the redhead, lifting his arms in imitation of a gorilla and pretending to scratch under his armpits. "Look, he's got a handbag." The woman pointed down at Gabriel's music case. "Let's have a look." The shaved-head man grabbed the case and wrenched it from Gabriel's hand. "No, give that back!" he protested. "It's mine. My dad gave it to me." Somehow the whole group moved out into the lane, propelling Gabriel with them. The music case was open now, and precious sheets containing the pieces that he was supposed to practice for his next lesson were dropping into the muddy gutter, filled with dead leaves and discarded cigarette ends. Gabriel bent down to retrieve them, but the red-headed man took hold of him and forced him back against the wall of the college. "Don't you talk like that to us," he growled. "Where did the likes of you get this sort of stuff?" "He's right," the woman backed him up, coming up and putting her painted face uncomfortably close to Gabriel's. "It's no good you claiming this stuff is all legit. I'll bet you pinched it from one of the students." "No, honestly," Gabriel pleaded. "It's mine. My mum bought it for me. Please, give it back. I'll be in trouble if I can't practice." "What do you think?" Still pinning Gabriel to the wall with one hand, the man looked round at his companions. "Shall we give him his handbag back?" "Nah," the woman shook her head. "Hand it into the porters as lost property." "Good idea," agreed the shaved-head man. "If it really is his, he can claim it back, can't he?" "OK." Gabriel looked from face to face, with pleading in his eyes. "Give it to the porters, but let me pick up the music. It's getting all messed up." The redhead stared at him as if he was debating what to do next. The other two leaned against the wall and took slow drags on their cigarettes. Time seemed to stand still. "Stop that!" Gabriel's tormentors swung round to stare across the road at a voice that seemed to come from nowhere. It was loud and strong, a deep man's voice, suggesting that its owner must be large and muscular. "Let him go!" the voice came again. Gabriel still could not see where it was coming from, but more importantly, his captor had relaxed the grip on his shoulder a little. He slid out from under the huge, hairy hand and started to run. He was vaguely aware of a human shape running in the other direction, a big man, taller even than his father. But his whole mind was focused on putting as much distance as he could between himself and the three bullies. His chest heaved and his legs began to ache as he forced himself to keep going through the network of narrow streets. As he reached busier roads, passers-by stared at him as he dodged and weaved to avoid bumping into them. He was flagging now, but still desperate to reach the high and the sanctuary of the bus that would carry him home. He rounded a corner and— "What's the hurry, young man?" Gabriel gazed up at the police officer with whom he had collided as he swerved to avoid crashing into a bicycle chained to the railings outside a bank. She smiled down at him, but held his arm in a firm grip that forced him to halt. He stood there panting, conscious of his heart pounding against his ribs, and his leg muscles protesting at the punishing exertion to which he had subjected them. "Well?" It was another police officer, a man this time, in a different uniform, with 3 stripes on the sleeve. "Let's hear it. What's the tearing rush?" Gabriel stared, craning his neck round to see the man's face as he fought for enough breath to answer the question. My, he panted at last, gesticulating across the road with his free arm to indicate the bus stop which had been his goal. "My bus," he gasped at last. My mum. She'll worry if I'm not back for dinner." He felt the grip on his arm relax a little. Was she going to let him go? "Well, leave more time for it next time," she said, in a voice that reminded him of an occasion when one of his teachers had stopped him for running in the corridor at school. "You could cause an accident, racing along the pavement like that." "Yes, ma'am," Gabriel muttered as she finally let go of his arm. He started to move off, but the other police officer barred his way. "Not so fast, young man. I'd like to know what you've got in there." He pointed down at the pockets of Gabriel's duffel coat, one of which was bulging noticeably. Gabriel felt his heart, which had just been getting back to normal speed after his exertions, speeding up again as he tried to remember what he was carrying. The bulge was caused by the knitted hat which his mother had insisted on him wearing when he left home that afternoon. But was there anything else in there? Something that he wouldn't want other people to see? He pulled out the hat and held it out towards the police officer, who took it and felt it all over, as if expecting to find something concealed between the double layers of knitting. He handed it back with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Then he delved with his own hand into each of the pockets of Gabriel's coat, pulling out the pair of gloves that the boy had not had time to put on before the dramatic encounter in Goose Lane. "What's your name?" Gabriel. Gabriel Sibanda, sir." "The angel Gabriel, eh?" There was mockery in the voice. "Well, let's see if you are so angelic, shall we? Take that coat off and stand up against that wall, with your arms and legs spread, so I can check the rest of your pockets." Gabriel stared back in momentary disbelief, and then started following the instructions. He undid his coat and slipped it off his shoulders. The policewoman took it from him and put it over her arm, smiling weak reassurance, as if she were uncomfortable with the turn of events, but did not like to protest. The man was clearly in charge. "Go on," he barked. "I thought you were in a hurry." Gabriel stepped over to the wall of the bank. A few feet away, customers were queuing for the ATM machine. He could feel their eyes on his back as he stood facing the wall, with his arms raised and his feet spread apart. The policeman patted him all over, reaching into his trouser pockets and taking out the contents for inspection. Satisfied at last, he stepped back and instructed Gabriel to turn round. "Okay," he said in a much lower voice. "That's all, this time. But mind how you go." "Yes, sir," Gabriel mumbled back. "Better put this back on." The woman officer helped him back into his coat. "I'll see you to your bus." "It's okay, thanks. The stop's only just over there." "Still, I'll just see you safe over the road."